I want to share with you some chilling stories about people who dabbled in the world of spirit summoning, only to regret it instantly. These stories serve as cautionary tales, reminding us of the potential dangers of meddling with forces beyond our understanding. First, let's talk about the case of Roland Doe, also known as Robbie Mannheim. Now, in 1949, this 14-year-old boy from Maryland became the inspiration for William Peter Blatty's widely popular novel, The Exorcist. Roland had been experimenting with a Ouija board, trying to contact spirits when he allegedly became possessed by a malevolent entity. Now, the events that followed were nothing short of terrifying. Roland's family reported strange noises, furniture moving on its own, and unexplained events. The boy himself would go into trances, speaking in a very deep, frightening voice and exhibiting supernatural strength. Now, the Catholic Church eventually intervened, performing a series of exorcisms on Roland. The rituals were said to be so intense that they left the boy shaken and traumatized. In mid-1949, several newspaper articles printed anonymous reports of the alleged possession and exorcism. The source for these reports is thought to be the family's former pastor, Luther Miles Schultz, and according to one account, a total of 48 people witnessed this exorcism. According to author Thomas B. Allen, Father Walter was one of the last surviving eyewitnesses of the events and participated in the exorcism. Allen wrote that a diary kept by attending priest Father Raymond J. Bishop detailed the exorcism performed on Roland Doe. Now, speaking in 2013, Allen emphasized that definitive proof that the boy known only as Robbie was possessed by malevolent spirits is unattainable. Now, according to Allen, Halloran also expressed his skepticism about potential paranormal events before his death. When asked in an interview to make a statement verifying that the boy had actually been demonically possessed, Halloran responded saying, "No, I can't go on record. I never made an absolute statement about the things because I didn't feel I was qualified." This exorcism case inspired the novel, which in turn was adapted into the 1973 horror film of the same title, The Exorcist. The case also inspired the 2000 movie, Possessed, which is said to be closer to the story in Allen's book. A documentary was made of the case titled In the Grip of Evil. While the exact details of the events are still disputed, one thing is very clear. Roland's experimentation with spirit summoning had devastating consequences. Another case that comes to mind is that of the Perron family. In January of 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Rhode Island with their 5 daughters, only to discover that it was haunted by an evil spirit. It started very small. The family reported, all manners of paranormal activity, from unexplained noises and movements to physical attacks. Carolyn would notice that the broom went missing or seemed to move from one place to the next by itself. She could hear the sound of something scraping against the kettle in the kitchen when no one was even in there. She'd find small piles of dirt in the center of a freshly cleaned kitchen. Their daughters would also say that they would notice spirits around the house and that they seemed angry. As the haunting, intensified, the parents sought the help of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, the Warrens, who were also involved in the Amityville horror case, believed that the spirit was the ghost of a witch who had been slaughtered on the property. The Warrens attempted to perform a cleansing ritual to rid the house of the malevolent entity, but however, the ritual was said to have awakened the spirit instead, making it even more aggressive. Now, the parents eventually fled the house, unable, of course, to cope with the intense paranormal activity. When the movie, The Conjuring, was released in 2013, it was met with critical acclaim. Critics everywhere praised it for its, all too very realistic portrayal of the demonic haunting of the innocent family in Rhode Island. Most viewers assumed that the movie was, nothing but the wild imagination of director James Wan. However, the true story of The Conjuring is actually rooted in the horrifying true experience of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed Warren was a World War II veteran and a former police officer who became a self-professed demonologist after studying the subject on his own. His wife Lorraine claimed to be a clairvoyant and medium who was capable of communicating with, the demons that Ed discovered. And in 1952, 1942, Ed and Lorraine founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. They quickly gained notoriety as respected paranormal investigators after their initial investigation of the Amityville hauntings. Although the movies seem, over-dramatized and impossible to believe, the Warrens maintain that all of the events depicted actually transpired. Though Ed passed away sadly in 2006, Lorraine was a consultant on the film and claims that she didn't let the directors take any more dramatic license than was absolutely necessary. Last on my list to talk about is a well-documented case, is that of Latoya Ammons, now an American woman who, along with her 3 children, experienced a series of terrifying paranormal events after conducting a Ouija board seance in their Gary, Indiana home. Shortly after, she began to experience strange occurrences, including hearing strange noises, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling a very intense, unsettling presence. She said she heard footsteps in the basement and doors opening and closing on their own. Desperate for answers, Latoya turned to a Ouija board, hoping to communicate with whatever entity was responsible for the haunting. She gathered her family and conducted a seance, asking, the spirit to reveal itself. According to Latoya, the entity responded, identifying itself as Zozo, a malicious spirit known for its dark and very sinister nature. Latoya and her family were initially, skeptical, of course, but as, the entity began to manifest itself, they realized they had made a very grave mistake. The entity Zozo began to wreak havoc on the family, causing physical attacks, unexplained noises. The family reported finding strange symbols etched into the walls and experiencing very intense, unexplained cold spots throughout the house. As the haunting intensified, Latoya and her family became convinced that they had summoned a very evil spirit and was determined to destroy them. The family reached out to their doctor on April 19, 2012, when he visited the house during, the supposed haunting. He actually noted that their behavior was just delusional. Someone from his office contacted the police and the children were taken to the hospital. The DCS actually initially believed that the children were just performing for their mother. In other words, making it all up for attention. But that wasn't true, and it's even alleged that her 9-year-old son was seen walking backwards up the wall in the presence of a family case manager as well as a hospital nurse. So once that happened, it really debunked that whole theory that they were making it up. The nurse made a statement that said, he walked up the wall, flipped over, and just stood there. There's no way he could have done that. The police captain named Charles Austin said it was the strangest story he ever heard and admitted that at first he thought the family was making it up in an attempt to just make money. But after several visits to their home and interviews with witnesses, he simply said, "I am a believer." Campbell says she remembers telling her daughter, "We need help. We need to talk to someone who knows how to deal with it." And so desperate for help, they turned to a local paranormal investigator who confirmed that the entity was indeed Zozo, a spirit that's known for its very dark and malevolent nature. Now, the family eventually fled their home, unable to cope, of course, with the intense paranormal activity. Latoya has since spoken publicly about her experiences, warning others of the dangers of using Ouija boards and summoning spirits. In 2024, Netflix released a movie called The Deliverance, which is said to be based on this exact case. The movie begins with a title card that reads, "The following story is inspired by true events." So if this has intrigued you, go give that a watch. And in 2014, a man named Zach Bargains actually purchased the house for $35,000 and demolished it in January of 2016 after filming a documentary in it titled The Demon House, which was released in 2018. So that's another one you can go watch. Now, these stories illustrate the potential dangers of spirit summoning.
First up, we have Incubus. This dark demon is said to take on the appearance of a male human who tries to impregnate unsuspecting women while they are asleep. Now, the goal of Incubus is to use his unsuspecting victims to birth demons and witches in order to create more servants of hell and devil worshippers. The word incubus is actually derived from the Latin language and directly translates to nightmare. there. So keeping that in mind, it only makes sense that this demon would appear in the shadows of the night to prey on his victims. It is not known how many dark beings Incubus could have fathered, but it is believed that the famous magician Merlin was actually created by Incubus. Many people believe that Merlin would actually spread dark magic in the towns that he traveled to while he was under the demon's control. Now, some people also believe that this demon has actually been summoned through a Ouija board on multiple occasions. There are many stories of people find their partners alone in bed, doing some unspeakable acts by themselves. It also appears that any woman who has been a victim of Incubus has no recollection of the events that led to their eventual pregnancy. And once a Ouija board has been used to summon Incubus, it is incredibly hard to get rid of him. This is not as simple as opening a door and kicking someone out of your house when you want them to leave. Some of the oldest tricks that were used in the medieval era include covering your bed in black salt and burning special types of incense that Incubus really doesn't like. So unless you want to have a very disgusting visitor arrive in your home, the Incubus is one demon you should never activate with a Ouija board. So do you believe that Ouija boards are as dangerous as people claim? Give us your thoughts in the comments down below as we check out some more demons. Next up is Beelzebub. This demon is viewed as many different things by many different people, which brings up the possibility that it could be a real-life shapeshifter. Now, most demons have a clear goal that they want to achieve, and they have various ways of manipulating their victims in order to obtain what they want. Beelzebub loosely translates to Lord of the Flies, which has led many to believe that this demon could very well take on the appearance of a small insect. However, other stories have described Beelzebub as a large demon that actually commands a huge army of insect-like creatures. It is said that Beelzebub uses its many servants to cause destruction and wreak havoc on Earth through violent attacks. These servants are generally regarded as scum and excrement that are lurking in the deepest depths of the underworld. Some religious figures even believe that these servants are damned souls who are forced to carry out their Lord's dirty work for the rest of eternity. The Catholic Church especially fears Beelzebub, as he is even mentioned in the Bible. The scribes in Mark 3:22 have actually accused Jesus Christ himself of working directly with Beelzebub. Some believe that the Lord of the Flies was banishing evil spirits away from Earth on Jesus' orders so he could gain even more servants. Now, anything that commands an army of evil spirits and has the ability to shapeshift should not be taken lightly. Summoning Beelzebub with a Ouija board can enrage the demon and cause it to take over your day-to-day life. There have been reports of Beelzebub appearing in homes as a large dark mass that is most active at night. Other smaller paranormal events are likely the work of his minions, but this is one demon you do not want to mess around with. After that, we have Antoine Gay. This one may not sound as terrifying as a traditional demon, but it could be even more dangerous. Antoine Gay started out life as an ordinary human being, but he is infamously known as being one of the strongest cases of demonic possession to this very day. Antoine was a Frenchman who served in the military in the 1800s before becoming a carpenter in the city of Lyon. He then decided he wanted to begin the process of becoming a monk and was accepted as a lay brother at his local abbey. Now, things took a strange turn for him, however, when he shockingly decided to leave the church due to a complete nervous disorder. His sudden mood swings and his unexplained conditions quickly started to raise concerns that he had been possessed by a demon. He was examined by priests and other religious figures who reported that Gay spoke in a much deeper tone and began to share dark secrets of his life. He also started speaking in perfect Latin without ever studying the language or having any knowledge of it. Now, religious figures named the demon that had possessed Antoine Isacaro, but not much was known about the demon or its intentions beyond its name. Antoine Gay eventually passed away in the late 1800s due to various complications that priests believe were linked to the demon who had possessed him. But nowadays there are people who are convinced that Antoine Gay is still inhabiting our world as an evil entity. There are rumors that Isacaro had passed its energy onto Antoine when he passed away, and he is now tormenting other souls all around the world. However, because of the mystery surrounding the original demon, no one is really sure how to stop it. Ouija boards are likely the easiest way to summon it, but there is no reason why anyone should even attempt to do that. Next on our list is Baphomet. This demon is another direct servant of Satan who was mentioned in texts as far back as the 11th century. He is described as a large winged beast with a goat head and a human-like body. Many paintings also show the words dissolve and coagulate tattooed on the demon's arms. Now, this seems a little strange at first until you realize the main purpose of this demonic figure. Many believe that Satan had originally summoned Baphomet to destroy religion from the inside out. He would manipulate humans on Earth to carry out some evil deeds and spread the word that religion was very bad for the soul. Of course, Baphomet needed a large following of loyal servants who would help him in his quest, and he didn't have a tough time finding them. The infamous Knights Templar that existed between the 12th and 14th centuries were apparently the main followers and direct servants of Baphomet. They would supposedly carry out out all sorts of anti-Catholic rituals and actions, which included spitting on the cross. While the Knights were technically a military order that was supposedly fighting alongside the Catholic Church, some believe that they were actually fighting against it. Many people started to question the Templars' faith in the early 1300s, and some were convinced that they were worshipping demons. Then in 1307, it was King Philip IV who ordered the majority of the Knights to be arrested for worshipping Baphomet. This led to the of many members and the complete dissolution of the order. But if you thought that spelled the end of Baphomet altogether, then you would be very, very wrong. There are many anti-religious groups that still exist today, and many believe that they are actively summoning Baphomet to carry out their orders. While many evil spirits are keen on working with this terrifying demon, others are still actively fighting to banish him forever. And finally we have Lucifer. Now this evil figure is actually a fallen angel who is now believed to be the demon of pride. Now because pride is one of the 7 deadly sins, Lucifer's actions have resulted in him being labeled a demon by many in the Catholic Church. It is said that Lucifer was actually one of God's greatest creations, and many regarded him as a true son of God. While Lucifer was gifted a throne by God himself and was placed in the Garden of Eden to enlighten humans, his own self-pride eventually got the better of him. After witnessing the creation of Adam and Eve, Lucifer was ordered to bow to the original pair of humans. But in a defiant move of power, Lucifer declared that his creation was far superior and he refused to bow to Adam and Eve. Now some believe that Lucifer was incredibly brave to rebel against his creator, but God was not interested in hearing his argument. Lucifer was banished from heaven for his actions and is regarded as the first sinner for putting his own self-pride before God. His appearance as an angel quickly transformed into a demon who convinces people to develop egos. It is believed by many in the Catholic Church and others that egotistical people are the works of Lucifer himself, as he leads them to their inevitable downfall. While many demons could be considered more dangerous due to their violent natures, Lucifer could actually be the most cunning of them all. His slow and steady manipulation of a person's ego can lead to some terrible choices in life that can have irreversible consequences. The estimated number of victims who have been manipulated by Lucifer throughout history is well into the millions. Summoning this entity through a Ouija board might not have an immediate impact on a person's life, but it will slowly crush them over time. There are definitely ways to fix a person who is possessed by Lucifer, but you'd be better off just keeping him far away from any Ouija boards.
In 5th place, we have a North American ritual. While I'm about to talk about rituals in detail, I've left out some steps for safety reasons. If you decide to try and use the rituals, please let me know in the comments what happens. I do not recommend trying to open a portal, especially in our current climate. Seriously, as a Canadian, I've choked on enough forest fire smoke this year. But since this is what y'all want, allow me to begin. For starters, in order to open a powerful portal to hell, it's vital to work in a group, which should be made up of multiple powerful magicians channeling their collective energies into the creation of the portal. The more powerful the summoners there are in a group, the greater the results. Now, the power of the group will also determine how long the portal can remain active, since longer lasting portals allow more demonic forces to enter our plane of reality. Secondly, one must find a suitable area for performing the ritual, ideally in a rural location. The area should be quiet and desolate, free of distractions or unnatural channels of energy. Rooms that are surrounded by nature are the best setting, since it's quite helpful to have a frame for the portal. There are also energy centers from ancient times scattered across the globe that can provide a, tenfold or more of magical energy than a group would be able to manifest on its own. I'm not giving examples there, that's where you've got to do your own research. Next up, the connection between spiritual planes of reality and our own is the most sensitive at 3 a.m. The line between spirit and matter overlaps at this hour, thus making us more aware of the spiritual forces which we'd otherwise not come in contact with. I hope you're a night owl, because I am certainly not these days. One must dress also appropriately for the summoning. While there's no high school level dress code, clothing worn should be simple, uniform, and if you own a dark or red magician's robe, that would be ideal. All folks involved should be dressed the same, but there are 2 variations where 2 exceptions are accepted. The first of the 2 exceptions in regards to colors may be the 1 or 2 magicians who plan on entering the portal. The other exception may be the leader of the group, who will also light the fire. Alright, now that that's out of the way, it's time to start the ritual. Pretty simple, just pour gasoline or another flammable concoction on the ground. If you're creating a new portal, you'll have to trace the outline of the area, but if the portal is already clearly marked, a straight line from side to side will do. Afterwards, time to surround the portal and begin to chant. Conjuro potentiae Lucifer, patefacio a porta ad inferos, et tua diamond transare, Sic urantar mundi. I promise, I got through that without stumbling. As the 30th repetition approaches, have the leader of the group approach the portal and light the fire. On the 60th repetition, all the magicians should kneel on one knee, hands stretched, palms facing the flames from a safe distance, with energy from the hands directed at the flames. Repeat the chant for 30 more repetitions in that position. I couldn't. My knees absolutely could not. But on the 90th repetition, either the flame will soar higher and spirits visible to all or some members of the group will jump out of the flames, or another supernatural occurrence will be felt. If one of the members of the group feels summoned to enter the portal at this point, it can be done while the remaining magicians are channeling their energy into it. So the remaining magicians should remain in the kneeling position described previously, while 1 or 2 people at most pass through the portal. It's vital that the portal remains open so that the traveler or travelers have an exit. Don't wander off too much, because if your partner's concentration begins to falter, you could remain trapped forever in a state of doom and frenzy. Good luck on that front! In 4th place, we have the Cave of Sibyl. Naples, Italy is home to a gateway to hell called the Cave of Sibyl, which was described by Virgil over 2,000 years ago in the Aeneid. If I'm quoting directly, the gates of hell are open night and day. Smooth the descent and easy is the way. According to the poet, the Trojan hero of the same name met the oracle Sibyl here, and she guided him through the cave into hell. In 1932, after centuries of searching, explorers finally uncovered this entrance to the netherworld. Now today, visitors to the Cumae archaeological site can go inside Sibyl's cave and walk through her coffin-shaped rock-cut passageways. Okay, before someone asks about the ritual enacted, that was done privately by the prophetess, and I felt like since she left the portal behind, it deserved a spot on today's list. Partially because I wanted to emphasize that portals have been enacted since the beginning of time, and hey, if you need a portal, I'm not saying you should go here, but this place could have some strong energy for it. Don't do it, but if you are. In 3rd place, we have a ritual for summoning Satan. Once again, I'll be leaving elements out of this description. While I can't control what y'all do, I don't want any apocalyptic chaos on my conscience. My life is plenty exhausting enough without having that on its plate. This particular ritual comes from the Grimorium Verum, published by Jake Stratton Kent in 2009. So firstly, the magician must forge a pact with the demon that does the call dialing itself, a sort of psychopompic spirit called the Cele, whose sigil must be inscribed alongside the operant's initials at the outset of the process onto a ruby or correspondent precious stone. Ooh, I love rubies. So this amulet is to be worn inside the magician's breast pocket or on a necklace at all times. Essential to operating the Verum is a calendrical convention drawn from Hermetic astrology that utilizes both the planetary hours and assigns a spirit to each particular day of the week. So this dictates that the construction of most of the tools for the ritual are to be done at dawn over the course of a few weeks during a time when the moon is waxing. So unlike the ritual I kicked off today with, this one is much more time consuming. The actual ritual of summoning must be done at an appointed time, depending on the properties of the demon. So to compel the dark host, the magician must cut a branch at dawn from both a virgin elder tree on the day of Asaroth and hazelwood on the day of Surgat, inscribing upon them the seals of the demons Fremost and Klepot, to be fashioned into wands of evocation and divination, respectively. Similarly, the materials for the signing of the pact are to be purified and consecrated at dawn, also on the day of Astaroth. The Verum conveniently includes instructions for the consecration of a ritual stabby implement intended to sacrifice a goat, as well as its skinning, scraping, stretching, and curing into parchment upon which the demon sigil will be copied. The writing of the contract on the parchment, including the copying of the sigil of Surlin, the demon seals, and the drafting of all legal agreements, is to be done at dawn on the day of Beelzebub. Special herbs and incense are then used to immerse the magician in a sensory tradition. A mixture of mace, frankincense, and aloe wood is burned in a censer upon the altar at the ceremony and used to fumigate all tools for the operation. For purity, the magician must anoint themselves and their tools in a sprinkling of holy water mixed with mint, marjoram, and rosemary that is bound by a thread spun by a maiden. The setting of the ceremony demands a magic circle that should be roughly 9 feet in diameter and must be drawn with a stabby implement, consecrated at dawn on the day of Silcard, and drenched in red mole fluid and juice of pimpernel. Within the circle's center, the magician is to draw the triangle of evocation, upon which is set the ceremonial altar. The ritual itself prescribes a rite of sanctification, using the wand to mimic alternating flail lashes, and a recitation of personal exhortations. Then, after a series of prayers used to elevate the operant's magical authority, the spirit is to be called forth. After chanting an incantation of barbarous names, combination of barbarous names, the demons must be summoned in top-down hierarchy order. First petitioning one of the unholy trinity of Lucifer, Astaroth, and Beelzebub, then calling upon one of their 7 dukes, and then finally the demon further down the hierarchy which you wish to actually summon. Following an exhausting hours-long rite, the desired demon is believed to appear, either as a presence or as a vision in a mirror. So from here, the magician might sign a pact with the particular demon, and the rest depends on what is needed. And how you treat the demon. They're pretty dang tricky beings. In second place, we have Houska Castle. Located north of Prague, Houska Castle is a 13th century Gothic masterpiece that sits on top of Hell's Gate. Aesthetically speaking alone, I would love to visit it someday. According to local lore, the castle's chapel was built to cover an enormous hole in the ground that served as a satanic threshold. So I haven't been able to find the specifics on the rituals used to open the portal, but it was too important to leave off today's list. The defensive walls also prevented demons and other ghastly creatures from crawling out of the hellhole. Animal-human hybrids were reported to have crawled out of it, and dark-winged, otherworldly creatures flew in its vicinity. Legend has it that when construction began in the castle, all the prisoners that were sentenced to death were offered a pardon if they consented to be lowered by rope into the hole and report back on what they saw. So when the first person was lowered, he began screaming after a few seconds, and when pulled back to the surface, he looked as if he had aged 30 years. He had grown wrinkles and his hair had turned white. Ugh. May I recommend trying to find a modern-day Buffy? She'd be anyone's best bet for closing a hellmouth. During World War II, the bad German guys occupied the castle until 1945. The Yazidis were said to have conducted experiments and summonings into the occult. According to one source, locals were certain that they had been using the powers of hell for their experiments. So Houska Castle is still considered haunted, and many tourists have reported seeing headless horses and demonic winged beasts lurking in the halls. And finally, in first place, we have the Ouija board recovered from the Donovan household. Yep. Ouija boards count as demonic rituals. I repeat, as always, leave the stupid things in the store or wherever you found them. Not worth it. Patty Donovan was simply a lonely teenager who thought the board could find her a friend, and well, it found her a manipulator. She spent months falling in love with a spirit she believed to be in love with her, telling it secrets about her everyday life, becoming emotionally dependent on the spirit. So on the evening of March 2nd, 1974, Patty pleaded for the spirit to manifest. Yeah, the next morning, her father, Theodore Donovan, found the spark plug wires pulled out, the rubber hose unfastened, and the fan belt cut when he attempted to start his car. Not much later, Patty attempted to start her car, and it was discovered that the internal engine had been completely disassembled. That week, other incidents of apparent vandalism occurred around the Donovan house, and Patty could no longer raise her invisible boyfriend on the Ouija board. Night after night, she tried to communicate, but the planchette would simply slide over to goodbye. She had no idea that her ethereal boyfriend had actually manifested in the form of a supernatural vandal. By the second week of March, material damage to the house and cars had become so troublesome that Ted complained to the police. When they arrived, he pointed out the destruction done to garden plants and shrubs, the exterior of the house, and the apparent intrusion into a locked garage to puncture tires and tear engines apart. Before leaving, the policeman assured Ted that they'd keep an eye on the property during night patrols. Later that second week, after work, Ted and his wife Ellen were sitting in the kitchen with their son Brian when all three heard something smash against a wall somewhere inside the house. And after investigating, they found a gaping 18-inch hole in the plasterboard wall inside Brian's room. Just as upsetting was the fact that the jagged edges of the plasterboard were pointing inwards, with the blow coming from inside the walls. The house was further plagued by loud noises every night that only escalated in frequency and volume, along with further unexplainable damage to the walls. On April 1st, furniture began to levitate, with a 250-pound dresser flinging its contents while flying erratically. Rocks had also begun to rain from the sky, pelting only the Donovan house, which the police bore witness to. Ted eventually broke down at work and explained the horror of his home to his supervisor, who urged him to reach out to our favorite people, Ed and Lorraine Warren. So Ted instead tried moving his family into a hotel first, and the spirits followed the family there, destroying the room and making so much noise that the family was thrown out of the hotel and forced to return home. Finally, contacting the Warrens, they arrived in Maine as quickly as they were able to, and oh my goodness. Lorraine said nothing, although at the time she sensed in the home the presence of entities so numerous and threatening that she had to fight with herself to keep from going back outside. After a lengthy tour of the house, Ed and Lorraine conducted an interview with the entire family, where Patty's history with the Ouija board was revealed. The Warrens then contacted the Catholic Church to begin the process for an exorcism to be granted, which sadly took about a month. The family experienced many more unexplainable horrors during that time. After the exorcism took place on May 2nd, the family was finally free of the demonic torment, but left with over $5,000 in damages, which would be over $30,000 in today's money.
Coming in at 5, the Smurl's family. The Smurl haunting took place between the years of 1974 and 1989, and referred to claims made by Jack and Janet Smurl of West Pittston, Pennsylvania, who alleged that a demon was tormenting their home. Their first claims arrived in 74 when they alleged that their double-block home was disturbed by a demon that caused loud noises and bad odors, threw their dog into a wall, shook their mattress, and pushed their children down some stairs. And on top of that, even physically and sexually assaulted Jack on multiple occasions. In 86, the family brought in our favorite demon fighting duo, Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to Ed, the demon that inhabited the Smurl's home was incredibly powerful and shook mirrors and furniture after they tried to persuade it to leave by playing religious music and praying. Temperatures would drop, and the Warrens even claimed to have seen a dark mass form in the home, with the demon once even leaving a message on a mirror telling them to get out. The home was blessed by several priests, with one unidentified priest performing 3 unsuccessful exorcisms. Janet Smurl claimed the demon avoided the rite during the exorcism by moving between the double-block home and following the family to other locations. Now, the source of the family's possession was never discovered, with many media outlets claiming they were frauds, simply looking for 15 minutes of fame, whereas others believe the family invited the demon in on their own accord. What do you guys think though? Coming in at 4, Julia. Back in 2008, a case was documented by Dr. Richard E. Gallagher, a psychiatrist in New York who describes one particular patient that we will refer to as Julia, who he deemed to be possessed by a demon. She was a middle-aged woman who wore flowing dark clothes and was incredibly charming. However, she was also part of a satanic cult. The woman referred to herself as the queen of the cult, but as I stated before, Gallagher simply referred to her as Julia, a pseudonym he gave her. Julia had approached her local priest, convinced she was being tormented by a demon, and in turn was referred to an exorcist who reached out to Gallagher for a mental health evaluation. The question here though, and the question Gallagher wanted answering, was why a devil worshipper would want to be free of the devil. Right? Gallagher helped assemble an exorcism team, and the group gathered in the chapel of the home. Reports state that the objects would fly off shelves around her. She even knew personal details about Gallagher's life, how his mother died and how many pets he had. Spookier still, even when Julia wasn't with Gallagher, she still found a way to reach out to him. On one particular occasion, Gallagher was talking on the phone with Julia's priest, when both men heard one of the demonic voices that came from Julia during her trance, even though she was nowhere near a phone and miles away. Gallagher went on to state that he had never been more afraid in his entire life. Coming in at number 3, Cheyenne Johnson. Arn Johnson is marked in history for being the very first person to plead innocent on account of demonic possession during a case that is infamously known as the Demon Murder Trial. On November 24th, 1981 in Brookfield, Connecticut, Arn Johnson was convicted of first-degree manslaughter for killing his landlord Alan Bono. Now this is where things get odd. According to the testimony by the Glatzel family, 11-year-old David Glatzel had allegedly played host to the demon that forced Johnson to kill Bono. And after a number of tragic and terrifying events, the family enlisted our pals Ed and Lorraine Warren in a last-ditch effort to cure David of his demonic possession. The family, along with the Warrens, proceeded to have David exorcised by a number of different priests. It lasted several days, and according to eyewitnesses, the demon left the child's body and took up residence in Arn Johnson's instead. Now, of course, a claim like this would never hold up in court, with the judge ruling that such a defense could never be proven, and was therefore infeasible in a court of law. Johnson was therefore convicted, though he only served 5 years of a 10 to 20 year sentence. Coming in at number 2, Michael Taylor. Michael Taylor is a man who became notable in England in 1974 for alleging that he was possessed by a demon. Taylor lived in West Yorkshire as a butcher, and with his wife belonged to a Christian fellowship group. However, Michael wasn't all good, with him often admitting that he felt evil within him, resulting in him attacking the leader of the fellowship, Marie Robinson, verbally. Taylor's behaviour increasingly became more erratic, and as a result, the local vicar called in other ministers experienced in deliverance in order to cast out the demons residing within the man. I mean, a little hasty. A lot of people have a temper, doesn't mean they're possessed. Anyway, the exorcism occurred on the 5th and 6th of October in 1974 at St. Thomas's Church in Gorba, and was headed by Father Peter Vincent. According to Bill Ellis, an authority in folklore and the occult, the exorcists believed that they had, I quote, in an all-night ceremony, invoked and cast out at least 40 demons, including those of incest, bestiality, blasphemy, and lewdness. At the end, exhausted, they allowed Taylor to go home, although they felt that at least 3 demons, insanity, murder, and violence, were still left in him. And they were right, because while at home, Michael Taylor murdered his wife Christine, attacking her with his bare hands before also attacking their dog. He was later found by police naked in the street, covered in blood. At his trial, Taylor was acquitted on the grounds of insanity and was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for 2 years. And finally, coming in at number 1, Gottliebin Dittus. This scary demonic case takes us all the way back to the 1800s. Gottliebin Dittus was a 28-year-old resident of the rural German village of Mottlingen, located within the Black Forest. She was raised with Lutheran parents and had somewhat of an oppressively religious, highly superstitious upbringing. However, when her parents died, Dittus lived with her siblings and continued to attend service. But it was the people living nearby the Dittus home that began to notice strange noises emanating from the home during the dark hours of the night. Noises which sounded violent in nature. Of course, many people suspected abuse was going on inside the house, so people decided to investigate. According to reports, they saw things that they couldn't explain. Furniture moving on its own accord, strange thuds, scrapes, and bangs that seemed to be coming from inside the walls, leading them to believe that something paranormal was occurring within the home. Dittus began to claim that at night she was being visited by the apparition of a woman holding a baby in her arms, and she was prone to having sudden blackouts, on one occasion going into an unresponsive trance-like state for an entire day, before snapping out of it with no memory of what happened. Gottliebin was ultimately sent away to live with her cousin, and of course the hauntings followed her to the new home, leaving the other siblings in peace. A reverend was called in, who determined that she was in fact possessed by a demon, after witnessing evidence such as fits, speaking in tongues, and intense bouts of cursing and profanity. Gottliebin even claimed that when she was younger, evil spirits had tried to kidnap her, but were driven away by the power of her mother's protective prayers. The Reverend began the ritual of exorcism, which caused an escalation in the strange phenomena surrounding the girl. She became more violent, needing to be restrained at all times. She even exhibited horrifying vomiting, which included glass nails and blood. The exhausting exorcism dragged on for 2 years, with the Reverend ultimately coming out on top, and with Gottliebin supposedly stating, "Jesus is victor."
Coming in at number 5, we've got the Evoker. I'm going to kick off the list with my personal favorite, even if it doesn't really fit the theme that I'm going for here. It's definitely a ritual and it definitely summons demons, but it's also for a different purpose than most, as one might say awakening a persona isn't the same thing as using a ritual to bring a demon into this world. Potato, potato. Anyone familiar with Atlas games should be familiar with all the different ways of summoning demons. You can use an app, head through the TV, or fire up any number of electrical gadgets to access the demons that'll help you fight. However, one stands out above the rest. Persona 3 is well known for its striking visual style, kick-ass soundtrack, and of course, the method by which you summon demons. If you want to summon your persona, you've got to find a gun-shaped evoker, put it to your head, and pull the trigger. That's right, we're summoning demons by shooting ourselves in the head. By the way, I don't recommend using this method in real life. But in the world of Persona 3, doing so will allow you to accept your own mortality, induce terror, and summon your persona. I'd say in terms of rituals to summon demons, this is an extremely simple yet hardcore way to go about it. No summoning signs, no special materials, just a gun, your head, and your emotions. Boom. If only summoning demons was always that simple. Many folks are only able to summon one particular persona, but the protagonist in Persona 3 can use all sorts of demons to their advantage. So in this case, using an evoker can have all sorts of different demonic results. Not bad. Coming in number 4, we've got finding a meat suit for Samhain. Plenty of demons get summoned through the many seasons of Supernatural. Some need folks to draw symbols, light candles, and recite incantations. Others require that a bowl of assorted ingredients and blood be lit on fire. Then there's the ritual to summon Samhain. This one gets really specific. First, it should be known that this demon can only be summoned once every 600 years, so be sure you've got the right calendar before starting. Most times you bring them about, you'll need a few super strong magic users. Also, it's important that whoever's going forward with this summoning ritual hides themselves from angels. Samhain is powerful enough that the celestial beings of light need to be watching at all times. Then you've got to sacrifice 3 people over the course of 3 days. Of course, the final blood sacrifice has to happen on Halloween. When else would you complete a crazy summoning ritual? Thanksgiving? Grow up. During this time, some more classic ritual stuff needs to happen. Blood is to be collected in a chalice. An old Celtic incantation is chanted. There are black candles, goat skulls, pentagrams, and special minerals. And this isn't some little piddly summon, it's a crazy one. If you get all the steps right, then the earth will crack and Samhain can arrive, taking full possession of his meat suit. Isn't that a fun phrase, a meat suit? And right back to the Halloween requirement, Samhain is the origin of Halloween. We wouldn't be celebrating the holiday without him. Of course, bringing him to life means that we'll be dealing with a few more ghosts, ghouls, and zombies than usual, but I suppose that is to be expected around Halloween. Coming in at number 3, we've got entering a basement. This just seems to happen in a lot of horror movies, huh? Some folks head on down into a creepy cellar through a hidden door, and there's an artifact waiting there for them. It might be a book, or it could be an enchanted orb. Touch it, read it, or break it, the results are all the same. Demons. Or ghosts, ghouls, and goblins, but that's kind of beside the point. It happened in The Evil Dead when the Naturam de Monto is found and a recording of incantations is played. It happened in Wishmaster when the fire opal is polished. And it happened and has happened every year for ages in the Cabin in the Woods thanks to that lovely cellar full of cursed antiquities. The best thing about these demon summoning rituals is that they're so simple, any idiot can do them. In fact, that's probably the expectation in the first place. Why bother with the planning and the learning to draw sigils and the spilling of blood when you can just crack open a book and watch the sparks fly? Plus, with this knowledge, entering any spooky basement immediately becomes step 1 in your demon summoning ritual. There's always the chance you're going to stumble across some artifact that will irrevocably alter the course of your destiny. Isn't that an exciting thought? What kind of demon would you summon from the basement? I like the idea of winding up a cursed music box and dealing with the consequences. Coming in at number 2, you can torture a family. Unlike entering a basement, torturing a family to summon a demon takes a little more finesse. You've got to know and understand the demon you're going for and ensure that the victims really don't know what's going on until the last possible moment. Take the cult in Hereditary. They had this all planned out from the start. Like, it literally took them years to put this summoning ritual together. In the end, we get a lovely saxophone wail by the one and only Colin Stetson, and Paimon finds his way into a proper male host. But how did they make it happen? We follow the Graham family for most of the flick, meaning that we're not exactly privy to the details of the ritual. Thankfully, Madeline Aguilar interviewed some witches for The Cut to find out a little more. Turns out that Paimon is listed in a Solomonic grimoire, which sort of outlines what he does and how to summon him. A summoner would need to draw a magical circle around themselves and a triangle just outside of it. They've got to be wearing the correct seal and be ready to offer the demon all sorts of stuff upon arrival. Plus, there might even be some additional demon managing involved. If you remove Paimon, who was once considered a king of hell, who was going to cover for him? It's just like real life work, but more supernatural. As is the case in most situations, the movie summoning was a little different from real life summoning, but still, going behind a family's back to switch the souls of their 2 children by decapitating one and possessing the other is a pretty crazy ritual. Then there's the whole nude old people lurking in an empty house bit. That's a little less fun in my opinion, but maybe I'll understand when I get older. Finally, at number 1, we've got revenge. I haven't done any extensive canvassing to find out if this is true or not, but I feel as though revenge is a primary driving force behind plenty of demonic summons. Don't quote me on that, but consider the implications. People want a lot of things. A large automobile, a beautiful house, a beautiful wife, but not everyone's willing to put it all on the line to acquire those things. However, once someone is possessed by a need for revenge, there isn't much that will prevent them from getting it. So if they have to summon a demon and give up their future, so be it. Revenge will be served. A prime example of a revenge-fueled ritual has to be that in the movie Pumpkinhead. Poor old Ed Harley loses his son to some rowdy dirt bikers and swears he'll get them for this. There are no rituals for bringing his son back, but there are rituals for getting revenge. He learns this from the old witch Haggis, who tells him that vengeance comes at a terrible price. Ed is fine with this and uses his son's blood mixed with his own to turn a corpse into the demon known as Pumpkinhead. Thus begins a horrifying rampage fueled by blood, one that can only be stopped by completing the ritual. And the only way to do that is for the man who summoned the demon to die. Ed Harley, who summoned a demon for revenge, realizes that it wasn't the right call. He ends up taking the place of Pumpkinhead in the grave. But revenge will bring this creature back again. There's a sequel after all.
Coming in at number 5, Rosemary's Baby. Roman Polanski's masterpiece, Rosemary's Baby, set the standard for many cultist horror movies, particularly in the way it reveals the cult, using a steady and slow build and paranoia, confusing us as to what exactly is even happening. This 1968 horror stars Mia Farrow and chronicles the story of a pregnant woman who suspects that an evil cult wants to take her baby for use in their rituals. However, it is quickly revealed that her husband has made a deal with the devil for success in his acting career, and the price is offering up his wife as a surrogate mother for something truly evil. Satan's son. That's right, the cult uses Rosemary as a sacrificial lamb for Satan's grand return through his own offspring, and it is truly terrifying. The general sense of unease throughout the movie is why Rosemary's Baby is an absolute classic, and perhaps one of the scarier movies in the horror genre. The horrors depicted on and off the screen aided in the rumour that the film was actually cursed by the cult and summoned demons, with many incidents occurring off-screen to the cast and crew, including the slaying of Roman Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, at the hands of the Manson family. Coming in at number 4, VHS 2 Safe Haven. Safe Haven is one of 4 sections in the 2013 anthology found footage sequel VHS 2, with the segment being directed by Timo Tjahjanto and Gareth Hugh Evans, and being the best section in the entirety of the movie. The plot follows a news crew composed of 4 members who infiltrate an Indonesian cult in the hopes of shooting a documentary about their mysterious activities. Inside the building, they find the walls adorned in bizarre symbols, school children in classrooms, and women dressed in white garments. One of the crew, Malik, then overhears that his fiancée Lena is pregnant with another crew member's child, Adam. Things then descend into total madness. The deeper the crew go inside the building, with Lena being abducted by several women, with the cult hunting down the crew members for sacrificial reasons. Now, with only 29 minutes to play with, Evans and Tjahjanto don't hold back, not even for a second, with the segment being insanely action-packed and gore-filled from start to finish. Not to mention it builds to an insane, gore-soaked climax that will shock the audience. The cult are successful in their demon summoning, with the beast making its grand appearance towards the final moments of the movie, and it does not disappoint. Coming in at number 3, we have Children of the Corn. Children in horror movies are already creepy, but put them in a cult composed solely of children, then you have a recipe for absolutely terrifying scares. Children of the Corn, based on the book of the same name by Stephen King, is a supernatural folk horror starring Linda Hamilton and Peter Horton, and is set in a fictitious rural town of Gatlin, Nebraska. The film tells the story of a malevolent entity referred to as He Who Walks Behind the Rose, which entices the town's children to ritually murder all the town's adults and a couple driving across the country to ensure a successful corn harvest. As the couple arrive in the small, seemingly abandoned town, they discover the congregation of children led by a girl named Rachel, with them performing a cultural birthday ritual for Amos by drinking his blood from a pentagram-shaped cut on his body. Amos has turned 19, therefore is considered old enough for his passing, joining their god in the cornfield. Now, while the movie as a whole was a little disappointing, it does deliver on the horrors of cults. Not to mention there were 7 sequels, with the first being far superior. The cult movie in turn gained a cult following, with it being a hit among movie lovers. Coming in at number 2, we have Hereditary. One of 2 Ari Aster movies on our list, Hereditary was a surprise horror movie, with the reveal of its cult being kept a secret for much of the movie, making it incredibly unexpected when it begins to unfold. Released in 2018, Hereditary is Ari Aster's directorial debut, with it starring Toni Collette and Alex Wolff as a family haunted by a mysterious presence after the death of their secretive grandmother. However, what begins as a sober family drama very quickly descends into a crazy supernatural horror. What begins as a slow burn quickly catapults into a disturbing horror after an incident involving the family's son and daughter, leaving viewers covering their mouths. As a result of the incident, the mother, Annie, is forced to turn to a support group member, Jones, for support, learning ways she can contact the realm of the supernatural. However, this has devastating consequences, with her awakening something that should never have been awoken. Viewers very quickly learn that a demon-worshipping cult are the true causes of the family's misery and pain. Worse still, Ari Aster plants Easter eggs throughout the movie as a way of warning us of things to come. However, saying that, most of us may have missed these subliminal messages, but what I can say is, the wall-crawling demon was revealed long before the last 30 minutes of the movie, with the cult being there all along, watching the family and waiting for their moment. The cult in Hereditary are worshippers of Perron, one of Lucifer's most obedient devotees, who rules 200 legions of angels, and is connected to the Tree of Death, hence why the treehouse in Hereditary is so important. The summoning of Perron is gradual throughout the movie, but when he finally arrives and seeks solace in the body of one of the characters, well, it's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Midsommar. There are a few things more terrifying than a cult in horror movies. A group of people devoted to a dark high power who will do absolutely anything to appease the deity. No movie displays this as effectively as Ari Aster's Midsommar. Released in 2019, Midsommar is a folk horror film starring my queen, Florence Pugh, and follows a group of friends who travel to Sweden for a festival that occurs once every 90 years, only to find themselves in the clutches of a pagan cult. Now, unlike Ari Aster's Hereditary, Midsommar lays out its intentions from the very start of the movie. The movie kicks off with Dani discovering the death of both her sister and parents, with the incident putting a strain on Dani's relationship with her already distant boyfriend Christian. Not long after, she learns that Christian has planned a trip to Sweden with his friends to attend a midsummer celebration at an ancestral commune, so the group packs up and heads out. Things very quickly descend into madness, with the group arriving and being met by a large group of white cult members in a very peculiar white outfit, with Dani realizing that something isn't quite right here. However, her concerns are proven correct when 2 commune elders die by senicide via leaping from a cliff top. When the male elder survives the fall, the cult mimics his wails of agony and crushes his skull with a mallet. Yeah, things aren't fun in Sweden right now. Now, without ruining much more for those who haven't watched it yet, the cult does what is necessary to summon the dark higher power that they worship, with the American tourist being used as a sacrifice for the demon. Now, more interesting still, while this movie isn't entirely based on a real cult, director Ari Aster does describe it as a stew of sorts. I quote, "We're drawing from actual Swedish traditions. We're drawing from Swedish folklore. We're drawing from Norse mythology." All in all, Midsommar successfully draws on the disturbing conventions of cultist horror to generate a sense of dread and unease, making it my favourite folk horror movie and cult horror movie of all time.
Coming in at number 5, we have the sinister story of Clara, Germana, Cele. In 1906, Clara was a student at St. Michael's Mission in South Africa. She was reportedly an orphan of African origin, but had been baptized as an infant, and at just 16 years old, Clara made a pact with Satan. She later went on to reveal what she'd done to the overseeing priest, Father Horner Erasmus, but in an account written by a nun, it was already too late. Clara was reported to be able to speak in languages that she had no previous knowledge of. Witnesses reported that she could speak and understand Polish, German, French, and any other language that they could throw at her. It was also reported that she had become clairvoyant, revealing many of her neighbours' most intimate of secrets. On top of this, she had seemed to have gained an extraordinary strength and a violent temper. She threw nuns around the room as if they were dolls, and it was reported that her screams resembled a savage beast, with one nun reporting that they sounded like a hellish choir. Well, the priest soon stepped in, and Father Erasmus performed an exorcism on Clara. It lasted an incredible 2 days, and at the pinnacle of the ritual, Clara was reported to knock the Bible from the priest's hand and attempt to choke him with his own shawl. Next up at number 4, we have the bizarre story of Ronald Doe. Now, people claim that the story of Ronald Doe is the true inspiration for the classic horror film The Exorcist. The story begins in the late 1940s. Ronald, who was 13 years old at the time, was traumatized by the loss of his beloved aunt, Harriet. His aunt was a spiritualist who had a fascination with the occult, and she taught him many things, including how to properly use a Ouija board. You know where this is going, right? Hoping to contact his recently dead aunt, Ronald set about using the Ouija board to make contact with her. Well, someone else picked up the call. In early 1949, Ronald began to experience strange things. Scratching sounds coming from around the house, water dripping out of the walls, and then he witnessed his mattress flip over by itself. Scratches began to appear on the boy's body with the letter X, which led priests to believe that he'd been possessed by 10 demons. That's pretty unlucky. After months and months of grueling exorcisms, Ronald actually survived the ordeal after reportedly witnessing a vision of St. Michael defeating Satan's armies on a great battlefield. Good job. Bringing us in at number 3, we have the tale of the Ammons family. Now, this story is pretty weird, but whatever the true outcome, it led to one of the strangest cases ever handled by the US Department of Child Services, and many of its events are detailed in an 800-page report. It happened, it's weird, let's jump in. In 2014, mother of 3, Latoya Ammons, claimed to police officials that her children had been possessed by demons, a pretty strong claim for anyone. But, well, when a social worker and a hospital nurse came to check on the children, they witnessed Latoya's 9-year-old son walking backwards up a wall. Now, that's not all. Latoya says that the strange tale began with flies. Wherever the children would be, there'd be a swarm of big, ugly flies that followed them. And despite constant cleaning and repellent, they were still there. They'd also witnessed her 12-year-old daughter levitating above her bed, unconscious. Seeking the aid of a priest, the children were reportedly violent and aggressive. They spoke in grave, beast-like tones, and the priest believed that the children had been taken into possession by a demon named Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies. The police officer who had led the case publicly stated that it was the strangest, most unexplainable thing that he'd ever seen. No kidding. Next up at number 2, we have the story of Anna Ecklund. Now, this insane story of demonic possession reportedly lasted over several decades and followed Anna through her teenage years and most of her adult life. Born in 1882 in the United States Midwest, Anna had exhibited demonic possession symptoms since the age of 14. Raised in a Catholic household, Anna began to show strange signs during her adolescent years. She developed a disgust for holy objects, and it was also reported that she had a physical inability to enter a church. It is thought by the time Anna was 26, she was fully possessed by at least 7 demons. During a 23-day-long exorcism, dozens of people witnessed Anna do some pretty insane stuff. While she was unconscious, strange voices would talk in unknown languages. She would often vomit tobacco leaves and foreign spices, and she would verbally assault the people present with sins that they had committed in their childhood. It is believed that Anna's first brush with the demonic arts came from her aunt Mina, who was a reputed local witch, and would supposedly prepare Anna's food with strange herbs. The amount of records on Anna Ecklund is insane, and her case is considered by paranormal scholars as the most abundantly documented case of possession in the 20th century. And finally, at number 1, we have the true story of Estefania Lazaro. Our number 1 spot is the real story that inspired the Netflix hit horror film Veronica. You guys seen it? Pretty good. Now, Estefania's brush with demons remains to be one of Spain's most mysterious unsolved criminal cases. According to her parents, Estefania had developed a slight interest in the occult, which gradually led the teenager to perform a seance at school with her friends. According to a witness, they were attempting to contact the boyfriend of one of the girls who had recently died in a motorcycle accident. And you guys guessed it, they used the Ouija board. What happened next was a series of unexplainable events that occurred over a 6-month stretch. Estefania would descend into a strange version of herself, often having wild seizures and visions, and she would snap into fits of violent rage, snarling and barking like a beast at her younger siblings. After months of torment, she mysteriously passed away in her bedroom. Her death was unexplained. Her parents later reported walking past her bedroom at night and seeing strange, evil-looking, shadowy people. And then, on the evening of November 27th, 1990, police received a frantic telephone call from the Lazaro household. Her parents reported tall shadow people that had entered their home, and they were terrified to go back inside. As police entered the house, they felt the same eerie presence that had plagued her parents. And as they entered Estefania's room, they found a crucifix laying on the middle of the floor and a poster that had been shredded by claws. They witnessed furniture quickly shifting across the room and doors rapidly slamming. And in the living room, on the floor, was a picture of Estefania that had fallen off the wall and ignited itself on fire, but only the photograph was burned. The frame, including the glass, didn't have a single scratch on it.